After months of waiting, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, a remake of one of the best JRPGs out there as well as my personal favorite one, is almost here. If you're like my friends, you might have heard the name Xenoblade Chronicles once, or twice, or possibly had it shoved down your throat by a friend that loves the series. The fanbase is obviously very passionate about this franchise and the upcoming game, but why is that? What's the big fuss? Well, quite a lot actually. The original Xenoblade Chronicles is a game filled with memorable characters, worlds, music, and mechanics that I feel more people should have the pleasure of experiencing. To help shed some light on the significance of this remake, I wanted this video to be a buyer's guide of sorts to explain why it's such an amazing game and one you should consider playing with the release of Definitive Edition. Also, don't worry, I won't be going into spoilers beyond just a general back-of-the-box summary later. For those that might not know, my name is K Jewelers, and I do analyses covering several game series, primarily Xenoblade. Welcome to the world of Xenoblade Chronicles. Xenoblade Chronicles, a subseries of the Xeno franchise as well as the title of the first entry, is an open-world fantasy sci-fi JRPG originally released for the Nintendo Wii by developer Monolith Soft for Japanese, European, and Australian audiences from June 2010 to September 2011. North American audiences got the short end of the stick with no release until April 2012 due to the mass awareness brought to the game by a fan campaign titled Operation Rainfall. In a way, the Xenoblade Chronicles series' current popularity in the North American audience is thanks to the major strides made by the fans, which is why a great portion of us are so passionate about this game. Once it was localized, Xenoblade Chronicles received high praise from critics and players alike, and it was regarded as one of the best RPGs from the entire 7th generation of consoles due to its homages to the golden era of JRPGs, all while implementing its own unique systems and narrative threads. Since then, several entries have come out, which takes us to Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, a remake of that beloved first entry that North American audiences barely got. And with a few more notches in the Xenoblade series' belt as well as the evolution of hardware in the past 10 years, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition brings a high level of polish and improvements to the table. Gameplay-wise, Xenoblade utilizes a live-action RPG style that relies on auto-attacks and selecting certain moves called arts at the right times to take advantage of their specific effects. Battles are composed of 3 party members and enemies ranging from a single rabbit to a horde of robots called Mechon, the game's main adversaries. Also, something known as a territorial Rotbart, but you'll be acquainted with them soon enough. There are other elements like building aggro that determines which party member the enemies will attack, tension as a fluctuating passive that increases or decreases stats, and others, but the core identity of the Xenoblade series' combat comes from resource management and builds. Spamming arts usually won't be the best strategy, so you'll need to position yourself to get a damage multiplier, like being behind the enemy with backslash, or wait for your teammate to inflict a status called break so you can topple the enemy for unchallenged higher damage. Not to mention that your party will gradually earn a plethora of members to choose from that include archetypes like your typical glass cannon, tank, healer, and magic dealer. However, the fun comes in customizing their builds and stats via gems and skill trees. So, for example, you can turn a character named Dunban into an evasion tank with agility gems and even bolster that with a skill tree that adds even more agility with no clothes on. See, there's more than one reason people thirst over this character. The biggest and central mechanics of the original and definitive edition are the visions and Monado arts. You ever play games where the boss pulls out a move and you think, okay, well, I have a decent amount of health, I should be good. Nope! Well, Xenoblade Chronicles' visions offer a premonition of what attack, the damage, and the time in which it is to come. These visions allow you to combat them, whether that's by warning a partner, healing up, or selecting a Monado art to counter that specific attack. Once you break a vision and start kicking the enemy's ass, it feels so rewarding. But what's especially cool is how this mechanic is interconnected with the game's narrative and themes, which we'll get to that section later. Overall, the combat and builds might lack some of the complexity of X and 2, but it still has enough depth to be very enjoyable and still yield challenging encounters. Plus, if that sounded like a lot, don't worry, because Xenoblade Chronicles already included a fair amount of tutorials, and Definitive Edition's UI overhaul seems to include a bunch of quality of life changes to make comprehension in the mechanics much more manageable and legible, such as the inclusion of a timer for break, topple, and daze. Likewise, if combat feels weird at first with auto attacks and so forth, I do recommend giving it a bit more time. I actually put the game down for a week or so because it felt really weird at first, but it becomes really fun once you're accustomed to it. But combat's only one piece of the puzzle that encompasses Xenoblade's gameplay. One of my favorite aspects of the series, and one that Definitive Edition is pulling out all the stops for, is the environments and the ensuing exploration. Words honestly can't do some of these environments justice, as they are breathtaking and rich in atmosphere. From vast grasslands to snowy descents that are brimming with secret locations and cool sights, this game has you covered. The game even rewards the player for exploring with experience points and travel points. And travel doesn't seem like a chore because of how creative these environments are, alongside the change in visuals and music that comes at nightfall. So you remember that cool feature Pokemon Diamond and Pearl had with changing music? Yeah, this game has it in spades. The developers Monolith Soft assisted on Breath of the Wild and are working on the sequel, so if you're into 2017's interpretation of Hyrule and want a little something extra with more diversity and color, you'll probably love wandering through these areas. While you can get lost in these worlds figuratively, luckily it's pretty easy to avoid getting lost literally, since landmarks and quick travel are great tools at your disposal. Additionally, Definitive Edition seems to be adding a much better waypoint system for quests, as well as easier accessible information that will make them far less troublesome. Aside from an upgrade in the visuals department, this was likely the most requested update I had seen from fans, which is amazing for us, because it also shows that they really do care about having this game meet the fans' desires. And one of the greatest benefits that the remake has is that accessibility. Xenoblade Chronicles has previously been available as a physical release on the Wii, a digital download on the Wii U, and a port on the new 3DS. Each of these had their benefits, but also their negatives, like the crazy prices on the Wii release for the longest time, and just the fact that nobody really owned a Wii U. With Definitive Edition on the Switch, we're now given a version that manages to take the best from every iteration. The option of portability or couch play offered by the Switch's hardware covers both methods of play from previous variants, but also the price likely won't shoot to astronomical numbers due to the lack of retailer exclusivity that the Wii version suffered from here. You also don't have to use a clunkier play method like a Wiimote and Nunchuck, and Definitive Edition's camera and control feel seem to have taken inspiration from the smoother iterations of its predecessors. Beyond even the accessibility are the revamps coming to Definitive Edition in regards to aesthetics and new content. Definitive Edition looks leagues better than its previous versions, with character models, environments, and the work showing major improvements in appearance. This art style lends itself to more lively, expressive faces, and the original intentions for these worlds to be fully realized. The visual presentation of Xenoblade Chronicles was always the biggest criticism this game has received, and this change goes a long way. As for the music, Definitive Edition will be re-recording a huge amount of songs from the original game. I believe the number is actually 90 plus songs, and having more remixes is always welcomed. The Xenoblade Chronicles series' soundtracks are immaculate, like some of the best out there, and the first one's kills it. You have these super vibey songs like Colony 9's Night Theme, emotion-filled songs in Engage the Enemy, all the way to those kick-ass, larger-than-life pieces, You Will Know Our Names and Mechanical Rhythm that you might know from Smash Bros. This heavy variance in songs is excellent, and if one song doesn't vibe with you, then it's likely you'll find several others that do. Not to mention that Definitive Edition presents players the option to freely alternate between the new and old soundtracks, a feature that I think more remakes should have. This choice will be great for veteran players to experience a new take on their favorites, while offering newcomers a method of hearing the old tunes they might have missed out on. There's a reason people lost their minds upon hearing the first few piano notes of the title screen theme when this game was officially revealed. I go out of my way to always recommend this, but even if you don't pick up the game, listen to this soundtrack. Maybe like me, it'll partially be the reason you end up starting the game. The gameplay, exploration, and most certainly the music are huge variables that fans adore so much, but I'd argue that the heart of Xenoblade Chronicles and why it's regarded so highly among fans are the characters and narrative. To provide a brief synopsis of the story that is detailed in the trailers, Xenoblade Chronicles takes place in a world where lifeforms inhabit two dormant titans called the Bionis and the Mechonis. Millennia later, the humanoid lifeforms on the Bionis known as Homs have been in constant conflict with a relentless force from the Mechonis known as the Mechon. Once the stage is set, the game puts the player in the role of Shulk, a young boy living in a settlement called Colony 9 who studies a mysterious blade called the Monado. He's joined by his childhood friends Ryan and Fiora, as well as two veterans from a clash against the Mechon called Dunban and Dixon, with the former being Fiora's older brother. Dunban used the Monado to defeat the Mechon a year ago, and life has been pretty peaceful ever since. Yet, in a surprise attack, the Mechon return and ravage their home of Colony 9. Angry and bitter, Shulk and company embark on a journey of revenge to destroy all Mechon, as well as to discover the secrets behind the Monado. And that's pretty much your back-of-the-book description for the story of Xenoblade Chronicles. Building from that summary, a core theme of Xenoblade Chronicles' narrative is revenge, and the different lengths one will take that impassioned drive. The reason this theme works so well within the story is because a majority of the main characters are bound to this idea of retribution in different shapes and forms. However, their stories are all logically fleshed out, and the thread of revenge builds a connection between one another. It's quite compelling, and you can really understand why these characters are so dead set on their goals. But these characters aren't simply defined by a single notion either, as they all bring something to the table, with Shulk being a lovable nerd, Ryan is one of the best implemented best friend characters I've ever seen, Melia as a character burdened with countless hardships that we as the player get to witness, and the list goes on from there. I think a lot of people recognize Shulk from his appearance in the Super Smash Bros. Series starting in Wii U and 3DS. I mean, those rumors were the primary reason I decided to start playing my copy of Xenoblade. But there's so much complexity to his character and the rest of the cast that isn't apparent from that crossover. He also has probably some of the best voice acting for an RPG character thanks to a stellar performance by Adam Howden. Shulk is a standout, but everyone else's voices are still terrific with a great blend of comedic and heartfelt deliveries. The most striking feature is the use of UK voice actors of various dialects for the English dub, which is quite unique and a bunch of fun. And Definitive Edition managed to snag Jenna Coleman again as Melia, so we could be happy about that. All in all, the characters are the driving force for this story, and the reason the stakes as well as the twists and turns all matter is because we care for them. I mean, even outside of the main cast, Xenoblade has a great antagonistic lineup, with Metalface being one of my favorite villains ever, and I believe a good villain could be absolutely instrumental to the success of your narrative. When considering the narrative itself, I think one of Xenoblade Chronicles' strongest points is how quick it is to suck you in. I personally feel that the RPG genre is one of the slowest on average in terms of picking up the pace. Xenoblade Chronicles kind of counters that philosophy with a sequence within the game's first few hours that takes hold and doesn't really let go. It excellently immerses and interests you in the world and the mystery behind the iconic Monado. It's one of those games where you'll receive some new information and start theorizing about what that could mean, how it might connect to previous information, and predicting future outcomes. And it apparently won't stop there, since Definitive Edition is adding a new epilogue called Future Connected, and new story content and time with these characters is an absolutely riveting concept. I honestly think partaking of the story as blind as possible is the best way to experience it, so I'll leave it on that note. Considering all of its components, Xenoblade Chronicles was already a fantastic game, but it did have some flaws regarding visuals and cumbersome systems for navigation and quests, but Definitive Edition seems to fix those issues and then some, making one of the best JRPGs out there even better. I've only gone over a handful of the changes and updates Definitive Edition is making, with the addition of a theater mode, fashion gear, casual and expert modes, and others also being noteworthy. But I mainly wanted to focus on the biggest alterations and what defines the core identity of this game. What makes Xenoblade Chronicles so special? When I played the original Xenoblade Chronicles and I did quite a handful of side quests and just taking my time to breathe in the world and see the story, I finished the game in about 80 hours, and there was still so much more to do. With its countless hours of playtime, as well as the additional coming in the form of new content, and the impact these characters and story have left on me, as well as thousands of others, I definitely believe this game is worth the price to pick up and add to your Switch collection. No matter your experience with the series, whether you've played one of the other entries in the Xeno catalog, touched the original, or maybe you haven't gotten your hands on any entry yet, I hope this video helped elaborate on and show all the great features that are on display with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and perhaps convinced you to give it a try. If you have any questions or want to share your experiences in the comments down below, then I'd love to read and respond to those. If you do have experience with this game, then I ask that you be mindful of spoilers down in the comments below so that way we don't ruin this experience for new players. Also, if you enjoyed this video and are new to the channel or haven't yet, then consider subscribing and liking the video. It really does help out the channel quite a lot. I have several videos planned post Definitive Edition's release, and I'd love to see how far we can push this community before the end of the year. I'm also going to be streaming Definitive Edition at about noon Eastern Standard Time on my Twitch channel, so if you want a chance to see the game in action, then stop on by. And finally, if you haven't seen it yet, I am doing a giveaway on Twitter for a copy of the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition work set. It's pretty much the bundle that comes with the game and the art book in the box, so if you're interested in entering into that, I'll leave a link down to that tweet below, and pretty much all you have to do is retweet it, follow me on Twitter, and tag a friend down in the replies, and you're good to go on entering it. The winner will be selected on May 29th, so be sure to enter before then if you do want a chance to get that copy of the Definitive Edition work set. Anyways, that's gonna be it for me, so thank you all for watching this video, and until next time.